Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This video uses AI narration to present our original book analysis.
Oh, cool.
So today we're diving deep into Richard Dawkins' The Greatest Show on Earth, The Evidence for Evolution.
All right.
It's a pretty powerful read, really making the case that evolution is as much a fact as the Earth being round.
Right.
And he does it all without talking down to the reader. You know, it's surprisingly engaging for a topic that could easily get bogged down in technical jargon.
What I found particularly fascinating is how Dawkins tackles those common misconceptions about evolution head on. He uses this brilliant analogy comparing denying evolution to denying the existence of the Roman Empire.
Wow.
It really highlights just how absurd it is to reject such overwhelming evidence.
And he doesn't shy away from the religious implications either.
Right.
He points out that even figures like the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Pope accept evolution. It really underscores that this isn't about faith versus science, but about acknowledging reality.
Absolutely. And the evidence he presents is just so compelling.
Yeah.
One of the most striking examples for me is the case of domestication.
Okay.
Think about the incredible variety we see in dog breeds, all descended from wolves.
Oh, yeah.
It's a testament to the power of selective breeding to drive significant changes in both anatomy and behavior.
It's mind-blowing how much we've been able to shape different species through artificial selection.
I know.
And he takes that idea further, showing how natural selection works in the wild.
He uses the example of rat teeth, illustrating how different environments favor different dental traits.
Oh.
In one environment, natural selection might favor longer incisors for gnawing.
Right.
While in another, shorter, more robust teeth might be advantageous for crushing seeds.
Oh, interesting.
It beautifully illustrates how subtle variations can lead to significant evolutionary changes over time.
He also dives into the fascinating relationship between flowers and their pollinators, especially orchids.
Oh, yeah?
Some orchids have evolved incredibly intricate adaptations to trick insects into pollinating them, showing just how powerful and specific natural selection can be.
And then there's the case of the guppies in Trinidad. It's a fantastic example of how predator pressure and sexual selection can interact to shape the evolution of a species.
Right, like how male guppies in streams with fewer predators tend to be more brightly colored, while those in predator-rich environments have evolved duller coloration to avoid being spotted.
Exactly. It's a beautiful illustration of how natural selection balances the need for survival with the drive to reproduce.
Wow.
But of course, no discussion of evolution would be complete without delving into the fossil record.
And Dawkins doesn't shy away from tackling the missing link argument that creationists often throw around.
He dismantles that argument brilliantly, explaining that it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how evolution works. The fossil record isn't about finding a perfect linear progression. It's about finding transitional forms that showcase the gradual changes and divergences that have occurred over millions of years.
And he highlights some truly remarkable transitional fossils like Tiktaalik, this incredible creature with features of both fish and early amphibians, perfectly bridging the gap between aquatic and terrestrial life.
Another fascinating example is Odontotolsis, an ancient turtle with a partially formed shell, providing a glimpse into the evolution of this unique feature.
Wow.
These fossils offer concrete evidence of the gradual transformations that have shaped life on Earth.
And then there's the whole story of continental drift, which adds another layer of complexity to the evolutionary picture.
It's amazing to think that the continents have been constantly moving, shifting across the globe for millions of years.
Yeah.
This process has profoundly impacted the distribution and evolution of life, explaining why similar fossils can be found on continents now separated by vast oceans.
It's like piecing together a giant, ever-changing puzzle, where the pieces have been rearranged over eons.
One of the best examples of this is the cichlid fish in the African Great Lakes.
Oh, cool.
Each lake has hundreds of unique cichlid species, all descended from a few ancestral species.
Wow.
This explosive speciation was possible because geographic isolation within each lake allowed populations to evolve along different trajectories.
Interesting.
It's a stunning example of how isolation can drive rapid diversification.
It really highlights the power of geography in shaping the evolution of life. Now, speaking of connections, Dawkins beautifully explains the concept of homology, these shared anatomical structures that point to a common ancestor.
The pentadactyl limb, the five-fingered hand structure found in everything from humans to bats to whales, is a classic example.
Oh, yeah.
It's incredible to see how the same basic blueprint has been modified and adapted for such diverse functions.
And he points out that modern molecular genetics actually confirms the relationships suggested by anatomical homology. DNA sequencing has provided us with the ultimate tree of cousinship, showing how all life on Earth is interconnected through shared ancestry.
It's truly a mind-blowing realization.
Yeah.
This is just the tip of the iceberg, really scratching the surface of what Dawkins covers in The Greatest Show on Earth. He goes on to explore some even more fascinating and challenging aspects of evolution.
Interesting. It's amazing how evolution can take something as simple as a five-fingered hand and transform it into a wing, a flipper, or, well, our incredibly versatile human hand.
It speaks to the remarkable plasticity of life, the ability to adapt and evolve over countless generations to fill a vast array of ecological niches.
One of the thought experiments Dawkins uses that really blew my mind was the hairpin idea.
Oh, yeah.
It helps visualize how all life is connected through these chains of descent.
It's such a powerful image. Imagine tracing the lineage of a rabbit back in time,
Right.
generation by generation, until you reach a common ancestor it shares with a leopard. Then you trace that lineage forward again, following the branch that leads to the leopard.
It's like making a U-turn in evolutionary time, traveling back to a shared starting point and then forward along a different path.
The truly mind-boggling part is that every individual in that long chain of ancestors and descendants would have been able to mate with its neighbors and produce fertile offspring.
Wow.
There was never a point where one species abruptly transformed into another. It's a continuous flow of change, highlighting the interconnectedness of all life.
It really challenges the way we typically categorize in separate species. We tend to think in terms of distinct boxes, but evolution shows it's more like a vast, interconnected web.
And another point that Dawkins emphasizes is that the speed of evolution can be much faster than we might imagine.
Oh, really?
We tend to think of it as this incredibly slow process that unfolds over millions of years.
Yeah.
But there are countless examples of rapid evolutionary change happening right before our eyes.
He talks about that fascinating experiment with lizards introduced to a small island off the coast of Croatia. Within just a few decades, the lizards on the new island had evolved significant differences compared to the original population.
Yeah, their head size and shape, bite strength, and even their digestive systems had adapted to the new environment and available food sources. It's a remarkable example of how quickly natural selection can drive noticeable changes.
And then there's Richard Lenski's long-term experiment with E. coli bacteria. It's been running for over 30 years, tracking the evolution of 12 populations in the lab.
It's like having a window into evolution in action. They've observed changes in the bacteria's ability to utilize different food sources, changes in their size and shape,
Oh, wow.
even the evolution of entirely new metabolic pathways.
One of the most dramatic events was when one of the bacterial populations suddenly developed the ability to utilize citrate, a nutrient that E. coli normally can't use in the presence of oxygen.
It was a remarkable leap forward, essentially unlocking a brand new food source for that population and giving them a huge advantage in their environment. It's a perfect example of how evolution can lead to the emergence of entirely new traits.
These examples really highlight the dynamic and ongoing nature of evolution.
Right.
It's not some distant process that happened millions of years ago. It's happening all around us, constantly shaping and reshaping life.
And it's not just happening in the wild. Human activities are also driving rapid evolutionary changes, from the evolution of antibiotic resistance in bacteria to changes in insect populations due to pesticide use.
It's both fascinating and a bit daunting to realize how much we're impacting the evolutionary trajectory of life on Earth.
I know.
But amidst all this change, there's this underlying unity that connects all living things.
That's what makes the study of evolution so profound. It not only reveals the mechanisms of change, but also highlights the interconnectedness of all life on Earth.
Yeah.
A point Dawkins drives home beautifully through the concept of homology.
That shared anatomy pointing back to a common ancestor, like the pentadactyl limb. It's amazing to think that our hand shares a deep evolutionary history with the wing of a bat or the flipper of a whale.
And it's not just about the number of bones, it's about the specific arrangement and connections. The same basic pattern, slightly modified,
Right.
appears over and over again in different lineages.
It's like evolution is working with a set of building blocks,
Uh-huh.
tweaking and adapting them for different purposes.
He even delves into how early embryonic development reveals even deeper homologies. Structures like the pharyngeal arches,
Oh,
which appear in all vertebrate embryos, develop into vastly different structures in different lineages. Gills in fish, parts of the jaw, ears, and throat in mammals.
so even though adult vertebrates can look incredibly different, their early embryonic stages reveal this shared developmental pathway, further evidence of their common ancestry.
And of course, modern molecular genetics, with techniques like DNA sequencing, have confirmed these relationships with incredible precision. It's provided us with the most detailed and comprehensive tree of cousinship we've ever had, solidifying our understanding of how all life on Earth is related.
This is all so fascinating.
Yeah.
But Dawkins doesn't shy away from some of the tougher questions that evolution raises. Things like the apparent imperfections we see in nature.
Yeah, like not everything is perfectly designed right. One of the most striking examples Dawkins uses is the human eye. Believe it or not, it has a pretty significant design flaw.
Yeah, that backwards wired retina thing always trips me up.
Right.
It seems counterintuitive that the photoreceptor cells would be behind the nerves and blood vessels.
Right.
It's like the wiring in a camera is in front of the lens.
Exactly. It means light has to pass through all that before it even reaches the cells that detect it. But here's the thing. Evolution has this remarkable way of making the best of what it's got. Over time, natural selection has favored numerous adaptations that compensate for this seemingly flawed design.
So even though it might not be the most efficient design, our eyes have evolved to be remarkably effective. It's like evolution has patched up the problem over time, even if it couldn't start from scratch.
He makes a great analogy with the Hubble Space Telescope. Remember how it was launched with a flawed mirror? Despite this initial error, engineers were able to fix the problem with corrective lenses, and the telescope went on to capture those incredible images of the cosmos.
It shows that even a flawed design can be incredibly powerful if it's refined and optimized over time.
And this idea of making do pops up in other anatomical quirks like the recurrent laryngeal nerve.
Oh yeah, that's the nerve that connects the brain to the larynx. But instead of taking a direct route, it loops down around the aorta near the heart before heading back up. This is a ridiculously long detour, especially in animals like giraffes.
It seems utterly absurd, but it makes perfect sense when you understand its evolutionary history. The nerve evolved from structures in our fish ancestors where it took a much more direct path. As vertebrates evolved necks and the heart moved further down in the chest, the nerve got caught on the wrong side of the aorta.
So instead of rewiring the whole system, evolution just kept lengthening the nerve as the anatomy changed.
Exactly. It highlights that evolution works with what's already there. It's a process of incremental changes, not some grand top-down design. And this brings us to another challenging aspect of evolution, the reality of suffering in nature.
Right, the whole survival of the fittest thing can seem pretty brutal. If evolution is all about adaptation, why is there so much pain and cruelty in the natural world?
It's a question that bothered even Darwin. Dawkins tackles this head-on using the example of ichneumon wasps, which lay their eggs inside caterpillars. The wasp larvae then hatch and devour the caterpillar from the inside out.
It's hard to reconcile that level of suffering with the idea of a benevolent creator or even a purely efficient system.
And that's Dawkins' point. Natural selection isn't guided by morality or compassion. It simply favors traits that increase the chances of survival and reproduction, regardless of the suffering involved.
So the wasp's reproductive strategy, as horrifying as it is, has evolved because it's effective, not because it's good in any moral sense. It's a sobering reminder that nature can be harsh and indifferent to individual suffering.
It's a difficult reality to grapple with, but it's an essential part of understanding the forces that have shaped the world around us.
And yet, despite these challenging aspects, Dawkins leaves us with a sense of awe and wonder. He ends the book with that powerful quote from Darwin about grandeur in this view of life.
He does. It's a beautiful passage that perfectly captures the essence of evolutionary understanding. Darwin writes, "There is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers, having been originally breathed into a few forms or into one, and that whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms most beautiful and most wonderful have been and are being evolved."
It's a reminder that evolution is not just about competition and survival. It's about the incredible creativity, diversity, and interconnectedness of life.
Exactly. And it's a perspective that can enrich our understanding of the world and our place in it.
Well, this has been an incredible journey through the world of evolution. The Greatest Show on Earth is a truly remarkable book, full of evidence, insight, and thought-provoking ideas.
If you want a clear, engaging, and thorough explanation of evolution, I highly recommend checking it out. And don't forget to subscribe to Mindful Moments for more fascinating deep dives into captivating books. You can find a link to purchase The Greatest Show on Earth in the description below.
Until next time, keep those minds nourished.